know you guys do intersexual dynamics. Let me ask you a question, guys. I want to get to it, which is, what do you decide is a high value man? And I want my run on this one as well, because we spoke about religion. I let people decide what they think is right, but you guys are, let's say you're specialists now. This is your area. I want to pick your brains a little bit, because I think you don't know, your impact is actually quite a significant impact. And I think that you actually made some very interesting contributions, you know, especially what now they call it the men's rights movement, or, you know, men's activism and so on. And I think some of your contributions, frankly, are good. I've heard some of them. I watched on YouTube. I wanted to start with this question. What do you guys think is a high value man? How do you define it?
You want to go first? Go ahead.
You good?
No, you go ahead, man.
Nah, I don't want to continue real quick. I got to.
Okay.
I want to go further in religion, but it's fine. Go ahead.
No, I mean, y'all can if you guys want. After,
let's change topic.
So, I mean, this is a subjective thing, right? For everyone, it's going to be different. So, I don't really think there's a truly wrong or right answer. But what I will say is that it's going to probably err on the side of, obviously, a higher earner than average. Someone who has respect from other individuals, has a network of people that are also on his level, as far as status, whether it's financial, social, etc. And he's somebody that other people want to essentially be like. I mean, to put it bluntly, is the guy that other women want to be with and other men want to be, if I'm going to put it very simply.
What about you, Fresh? What do you say about this?
So the term high value, the word itself, I get it. It's being used around.
Yeah, we hate using that term. We never use it. We actually never use that term.
Yeah.
Ever. I hate it.
But it means something in the world today, so we use it sparingly. But I would say high value man.
I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing what you're saying out the window.
Yeah.
Fresh, were you going to say something?
No. I was going to just define high value for me.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
So it just means a man that has worked on himself, he's successful in his own right, has a network of people around him that care about him and respect him, and at the same time has value to the marketplace. For example, maybe it could be singing, it could be, for example, his business, it could be, for example, his skill set to the public. Whatever that may be, makes him high value in the eyes of other people as a whole. That's what I would say.
Would you say that, and this is a question to both of you, is this an intrinsic classification or is it extrinsic? In the sense that if it's intrinsic, then, for example, like a block of gold, it has intrinsic value. But let's say, for example, that, like, you know, let's say a TikToker, yeah, doing some kind of a video dancing or something like that. You couldn't say that has intrinsic value, but its value is dictated by the marketplace. So is your classification of a high value man, is it more intrinsic or extrinsic in that sense?
So I would say it's up to the individual, because I made a song, High Value Man, funny song, by the way. But the term itself, high value, was used as a precursor for wearing watches and chains and having success, cars and girls. But that was my opinion at the time of what high value was. But as you evolve, you become more placed on different aspects of life. And maybe for you, maybe just a TikToker dancing on the internet with a lot of views. So I think it's just up to the person or individual what they decide for that to be.
I mean, it's a combination.
See, I've got a take on this, guys. I don't know what you guys think of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
No, go ahead.
We got you.
Yeah. Sorry. So I was going to say, look, I get what you guys are saying, especially when you speak about men and women. Yeah. But here's my take on this. I think there's a kernel of truth in what you guys are saying, but I think it's mostly in the economic marketplace. So, for example, here's what I would say. When you guys use the term high value, you're usually using it in terms of what women would be attracted to, i.e. vis-a-vis something like hypergamy. And there's ample evidence. There's a Queen study, which I think is the most authoritative, that hypergamy is true. Like, in the sense that if a woman is given a choice between a man with ceteris paribus, everything else remaining the same, a man who's a higher earner versus a lower earner, she's always going to go for the higher earner, in fact. And that's the truth. Likewise, a lot of the stuff about what you say about women who have less experience in what you call a body count or something like that, it's true that's probably in the sexual market value is probably going to be less ceteris paribus, everything else remaining the same. Mm-hmm. However, here's the thing that I would think that is important to make to distinguish between. This is why I asked you the question about like intrinsic versus extrinsic, because in this very strict parameter of how the other or the opposite gender sees that person for marriage or long-term committal relationship or even casual relationship, that this whole high value man has weight. This term has weight. But if we're talking about intrinsically, as like, for example, remember I gave you the example of the block of gold versus the TikTok video. Intrinsically, a high value man has always classically meant, usually in ethics, for example, all the way up to Christian morality and Islamic morality and Jewish morality, most of the world's cultures, a high value man or a high value woman has always been like a virtuous man or a virtuous woman. So virtue dictates the value of someone on an intrinsic level. Virtue. So what is virtue? Like in the past, even before Christ, you had a person called Aristotle, who died 323 BCE. He wrote a book called Nicomachean Ethics. And he had something called virtue ethics, which basically like he mentioned some of the key virtues for human beings. The most important one for a man that makes him high value, opposite to a woman, and this is what I'm putting forward, in that paradigm, and also in the paradigm of Islam and Christianity, I would argue, and Judaism, is bravery. I'll put it this way. If you had the most rich man in the world, but he was a coward, he'd not be a high value man. It would be a disqualifier on an intrinsic level. Yes, he might be sought after. It might be sought after in terms of like women might still want to be with him, but they don't really want to be with him because of what he is or who he is. They want to be with him because of what he can offer. In other words, they want to be with his money, really. They want to have access to his money. So they're using him, utility value. Yeah, they're using him for his money because they're trying to access funds. That's what they're trying to do. He's basically an ATM machine. And so what I wanted to distinguish between is a high value man on an intrinsic level who exhibits things like temperance, magnanimity, forgiveness, mercy, kindness, but most and chief most among which is bravery, because a man needs bravery more than a woman to provide and protect.
So yeah. I would agree with that. But my thing is that's why I was because you only spoke about it from the female lens, like how women deem like women deeming the guy high value. But what I'm saying is that you garner the respect of other men, and a coward does not garner the respect of other men. That's why it's very important. Like when I look at this term, not to just look at it from the lens of what females are attracted to, rather what do other men respect? And obviously cowardice is never respected. So yeah, if someone's a coward, then they automatically are disqualified because other men don't respect them. They can have all the money in the world, but they're a coward. So I see a perspective with virtue. But I'm saying, like, you know, when it's pretty much already implied that you're a virtuous man and that you're not a coward when other men respect you, because men, we tend to value other men based on their meritocracy, and that meritocracy is, you know, encapsulated in a bunch of different traits. Are you honest? Are you a man of your word? Are you trustworthy? Can I trust you to get something done and get it done when you say you're going to get it done? Are you willing to stand up for not just yourself but for other people that you love and care about? So cowardice has never been respected. So I would say that the virtue, that argument that you're making, which I agree with actually, falls into the other men respecting you, because that's what men respect, is meritocracy.
Well, I see what you're saying, but here's the thing. So this is an interesting parameter, but it's also an economic one. So for example, I agree with what you said. I think like other men would respect another man with a lot of money, right? Yeah. They would never respect a man who's a coward, even if he has a lot of money. Yeah. So here's the point. I think that a lot of the red pill stuff, like that we get involved in and stuff, or the discussions that we have, we overemphasize how much money we have to make in order to satisfy or to attract other women. And we underemphasize the virtue aspect of it. And I'm not saying that the money aspect of it is not important. I'm pretty sure that the money aspect of it is important, especially depending on how generous the man is. Because if the man is not generous, and which is one of the virtues, having a lot of money is not a problem. It doesn't matter. Even the woman, if she finds him to be stingy and wealthy, that combination will never work out because she knows what he's trying to do. So I feel like maybe, I don't know, moving forward with like Fresh and Fit and stuff, if we focus on the virtue aspect of things a little bit more, because I feel like the society is moving on to a degenerate state, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. And that is fueled by hedonism and capitalism. And also this idea that now Mammoth is the new god, which is the god of money. The god of money is the new god. People are now chasing money and hedonism and frivolous pursuits. They think that, for example, Rollo Tomassi wrote a book called The Rational Male, right? Mm-hmm. You've had him on your show before. I've read the entire book cover to cover. And he mentions in his book that, you know, you need to sleep with 50 women or whatever it may be in order to achieve certain level so you can really have the experience, to be with women. I think I've seen you, Fresh, mention something like that before because I watched a video before with you guys in Sneaker having a discussion.
Yeah, we've
and,
Fresh calls it spinning, not Fresh, excuse me. Rolo calls it spinning plates or plate theory.
Yeah.
He's 50.
I call it getting experience, right, and being able to understand how the sexual marketplace works. But yeah, I mean, sorry, you're saying.
But on this point, bro, here's what I would say.
Yeah.
There is no evidence. There is no evidence that having sex with a lot of women translates into an ability to understand women in the context of a committed relationship or longevous relationship. There is no evidence of that. So for this is where the red pill makes a lot of claims, assertions, but they're not backed, because the idea is, I feel like there's just ad hoc justifications and rationalization for hedonism, which is effectively just doing whatever you want, whatever you desire. But really, like, let's assess this claim, the claim that if you have sex with a lot of women, that's going to lead to you knowing women more and therefore having a stronger relationship, more longevous relationship with some kind of woman. But it doesn't seem to me that there's any evidence to that effect, because I was looking at some studies on casual sex. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was looking at, it was like 5 or 6 of them that have been done. And all of those studies, first of all, they're mixed. They're contradictory, funny enough. Some of them say that, they harm women. Actually, most of them say they harm women. Casual sex harm women. That is a consensus psychological finding.
It harms men too, a lot of these studies, but it doesn't harm it.
Some of them say it harms men. Some of them say it doesn't harm men.
Yeah, both
there's no study that says it helps them in relationships. Do you know what I mean?
Of course not. And they would never run a study like that because it would be considered unethical, right? And we know that, when they run these studies, they have to be politically correct. They got to get funding. They have to do it in a certain way to get the blessing. But what I will say is with the whole body sleeping with women or whatever it may be, it's not necessarily to understand women better. It's to understand the women that you don't want to necessarily be with. And I think that's half the game, because what ends up happening, right, and remember, I mean, you're in the UK, so you know this too. I mean, the UK is going through this as well. We live in a very hypersexualized world where women are more promiscuous than ever before. So my thing is, right, I look at it like, and I was just having a discussion with Andrew. He's a devout Orthodox Christian, and he saw my perspective on this too. If you're going to try to meet a woman in the West where they are promiscuous, they don't necessarily adhere to gender roles when it doesn't benefit them, they want a man that makes money, but they don't want to necessarily submit, etc. I think it's very important for you as a man to identify these women early on and not bring them into your life, because the beauty of religion, right, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, is that it basically had an institution of shame, and it had what I call training wheels to keep women honest with their man. It pretty much shamed them for not doing things that they were supposed to do. But these training wheels are effectively gone. We live in a secular world now. And unless you're a very religious man and you're meeting a very religious woman, it's going to be very difficult for you to find a woman that's virtuous. So my thing is, I think and the other reason why I think this is so important is because when you get married, right, luckily, in Islam, you can just go to a mosque, go to an imam, he'll marry you, boom, done. You don't got to worry about the state being involved. But most people don't get married that way. They get married through the state. And with the way the family courts are set up, with the way divorce is set up, with the way it's basically an entire industry against men, I look at it like, if you're going to go ahead and you want to have a family one day, which is the nuclear family, which is the backbone of society, and you want to get married, you are taking on a tremendous amount of risk, and I don't want you to go in blind. However, if you're getting married and the state isn't involved and there's no severe consequences to you financially, then sure, go ahead and be less sexually experienced and meet a woman, because at least you're not going to be severely punished for it. But my thing is, the reason why I even gave that idea, like, hey, get with more women so that you understand them, is because I just don't want men to deal with the horrors of the family court. Now, is it the best solution? Probably not, but I think it's a pragmatic one given the world that we're in now.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I just want to know what the evidence is of, for example, having intercourse with multiple women. What benefit, like let's say 50 to 30, what benefit are you alleging that it has on the man? What benefit are you alleging?
So that's a fair question. Every man has different competence, right? So like one guy might be able to hook up with 10 girls and be like, okay, you know what, I get it. Like I don't, it is what it is. But another guy, might be incompetent, might be an idiot. Everyone's, level of adaptation is different. So I'm not saying, oh, have a hard 50 and don't get married. It's like, no, if you find a girl that's worthy, that's fine. And I would argue that like our podcast is like, we're able to kind of fast line it where, remember, this information hasn't been out for very long. So people are kind of learning now through us talking about it on our platform, etc. So they might not necessarily have to even hit 50 because they're learning from our mistakes. The Chinese saying,
well, if they do get 50, what's the benefit of that? What do they get from that?
Well, hopefully, depending on the individual, they are able to identify women that are worthy versus ones that aren't.
In a sexual capacity?
Well, I'm also assuming that this person would be seeing this woman. If they're just looking to have sex, then obviously it's gonna be a waste. But I'm talking about, you're obviously courting this woman, you're hanging out with this woman, etc. You're seeing her.
Because look, my friend had your book. I was trying to look for it myself. It's called.
Oh, nice.
I was trying to find something. And actually, I was flicking through it right before I spoke to you, and I like the statistics you have on here. Mm-hmm. One of them that you had on here was, for example, that a man will spend 30 hours or something like this, doing speed dating online in order to just get one date, 1.46 date in the year or something like that. Now, what I'm saying is that to get 50 women, look, it's a numbers game, and I know it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
The feasibility, the amount of man hours that you're going to need to put in to have intercourse with 50 women that are not prostitutes, according to your statistics that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
The amount of man hours we're talking about, like if he's going to use Tinder or some kind of an app, and according to these stats, he's going to need to do a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And the question of benefit here is an important one. Obviously, from a religious standpoint, Muslims, Christians, and Jews all agree that sex shouldn't even be done outside of marriage. Now, it is still possible to marry 50 women. I mean, I'm not saying you cannot marry and divorce 50 women. It's a possibility. But I'm not necessarily saying that one should do that. Of course, we wouldn't agree that one should do that. The point I'm trying to get at is that there isn't actually any good evidence that having intercourse with that many women would give you a kind of benefit in the relationship. In fact, you could argue for the opposite. Because if you get sex very easily, going back to the idea of virtue, then you can be less restrained in your sexual appetites. And this is something that in virtue ethics is referred to as temperance. So if you're less restrained, you don't have as much restraint, for example. You don't have self-control. And if you don't have willpower and self-control in one area, you're less likely to have it in other areas. And I've read that in a book called Willpower, funny enough, by Roy Baumeister. A very fantastic book. I recommend it. But he mentioned the point that if you have willpower in one area, for example, he mentioned fasting, religious fasting as an example, Roy Baumeister. If you have willpower and discipline in one area, it's transferable to other areas. The idea of getting 50 women having sex with them, which is difficult anyway, according to these stats, because just because you're dating a woman, it doesn't mean you're going to have sex with her. As you know, like for the average person, you guys might not be the average person, because from a status perspective, you guys have got big channel, good money coming in. The guy's wearing a nice Rolex red face. I like it, fresh. And you're wearing a nice watch as well.
It's chocolate.
You guys are well put together.
Thank you, bro.
So not everyone is fresh, and not everyone's Myron Gaines.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be easy to get sex like that. So for them to put 30 hours to 50 hours to get a date, and then after that to get like 100 of those, maybe 30, I don't know what the numbers would be, a conversion rate. 5 dates to one woman having sex, maybe? I don't know. Is that
also,
Myron,
Mohammed,
more about this than I do?
keep in mind, right? Because people tend to criticize my, my idea that you should have sex with 50 women, but there's a bunch of other things I tell guys to have in place as well. They should make a certain amount of money, 35 years old, be in shape. They need to have a bunch of things in line so that they can be in a position. And the reason why I say this, so this is what it is. Make 6 figures a year or more, have 6 months or a year of savings, be in shape, 50 women, and then be 35 years old. The reason why I say have these 5 things in place is because most women, right, will look at you as a higher status, more attractive male, which will inevitably put her in her feminine, put you in your masculine, so the relationship ends up actually working, because we all know what happens when you deal with a rambunctious woman. Now, does that mean that if the person reaches 10 bodies, 20 bodies, 30, 40, and he has other things in place. Oh, no, sorry, baby, I can't commit to you because I need to hit 50. No. And like I said before, with our podcast, we might be able to curb it where they don't need to necessarily hit that number. But I'm speaking from a general perspective for most people. And then also with as far as the book goes with the dating stuff, this is why I'm such a big proponent of not relying on online dating. I tell people, meet girls through your friends, meet girls when you're out, meet them out in real life, use Instagram. We have multiple different ways that you need to go ahead and source women. Now, with that said, of course, if you're religious, then this might not necessarily apply to you because you're going against your religious beliefs. But my thing is this: if you're a religious guy, right, and you can't do this, that's totally fine. The only thing I ask is I want them to make sure that they don't get married with the state. You don't need to hit this body count number if you're getting married and it's just religious strictly and there isn't a state involved.
I see. Look, a lot of what you said there is very reasonable. I don't think it's wrong for a man to aspire to make a certain money, like a certain amount of money. I don't think it's wrong for them to put themselves in the. I think it's actually quite praiseworthy, frankly. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. My only issue is that the reason why I mentioned the 50 body count thing is because this is my analysis, bro, and you can tell me what you think. We're living in a time historians refer to as Pax Americana, yeah? It's a time where America is a superpower, and as a result, Western countries have not had to have wars where they themselves are in danger in the ways that they had in the past, okay? It's more like incursions or invasions or whatever it may be. As a result, we in the West are living in a state of relative ease and comfort. Arthur Schopenhauer, a famous philosopher, he said that human beings or mankind vacillates between extreme boredom and extreme fear. Okay, I think now we're living in an age of extreme boredom because we're not fearing that someone's going to kill us. Yeah, in a war context. As a result, we are missing what most cultures in the past referred to as rites of passage for men. This is where the masculinity crisis comes in. Because before, a man could prove that he is a man by stepping on the battlefield. Now, that kind of opportunity is no longer afforded to us on the same kind of level. And as a result, we have invented rites of passage for men so that they can feel like they have gone through a certain process and now they're men. And what I see with the Red Pill movement is that they've invented arbitrary and ad hoc rites of passage, which actually feed more into hedonistic liberal thinking than anything else, which there's scanty to no evidence that will improve them as an individual, virtuously or otherwise, the like of which we've just mentioned, the 50 body count thing, which I know comes from the Rational Male, because that was the first place I read it. I don't know if you got it from there as well.
He didn't necessarily give a hard number. He just calls it plate theory.
What I'm saying to you is, in the time it would take you to find non-prostitutes that are 50 in number that you can have sex with in the West, you can spend making money for yourself. You can spend working on yourself. You can spend improving your bravery, improving your proficiency, your strength. Because the thing is, I feel like there's an underlying assumption with the Red Pill movement, yeah? And the assumption almost is that we should live our lives to make ourselves most marketable for women. And I feel like that
that's not
in
true,
irony.
Though. That's not true. That's not what we
at all.
So I've always said
go on.
You gotta, and I talk about that in the book too, is I want the guy to be the best version of himself, and then the women are a byproduct of it. And like, I'm very explicit about that in the book, that like, hey, I don't want guys running around chasing women, spending a bunch of time and money and resources on women that don't necessarily want them, because what'll end up happening is what you mentioned before. He'll be looked at as a utility. So I want the guy to develop these characteristics of obviously sticking to his word, having these masculine traits, being a leader, being dominant, being assertive, going out there and conquering the world and becoming successful, becoming a catch. Then the women are a byproduct, because whenever guys go ahead and chase women, a lot of problems arise. So I tell guys, focus on yourself first, and then the pursuit of women could come after. That's why I said be at least 35 years old. So
okay, it's good that you cleared that up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So now my question is, if they're focusing on themselves,
yes,
why are they doing it? Are they doing it? Is there a purpose in life, which is an objective purpose in life that they are striving towards, or are they just doing it for another reason? So what's the reason that they're doing all these things?
That's a fantastic question. So, right, if I give you a gun, right, you can either choose to use it as a tool to hunt, to eat, or you can use it to commit crimes, right? But I'm giving you the tool, and then it's up to you how you want to use it. That's exactly what this knowledge is. Some guys are going to use it to find their wife, be able to, filter out the women that are worthy versus the women that aren't worthy, and they're able to use this skill set to their advantage for building a nuclear family. Other guys are going to use it for more hedonistic things that you disagree with, which I see your perspective on that. But my thing is, I want to at least equip them with the tools so that they can decide what they want to do with their life. Because my fear is I don't want them to get in a situation where the woman is dictating everything because the guy's aloof and not aware of what's going on in the.
And I think that aspect of it is probably where you excel the best and most, because that aspect of it appeals to something deep within every single man, which is the ambitious drive to become better. And so long as these things are very important, that we're clarifying that we're not doing this because of any woman. And I'm not sure if you've come across these archetypes, the alpha male, the sigma male, and the beta male archetypes. You've seen them online,
of course,
and the differences between them.
Of course.
You see the sigma male archetype usually has what you're talking about. He doesn't really care about what the woman is doing or saying or thinking.
For sure.
Whereas the alpha male, it's more he is a status figure, and as a result the women are coming towards him and so on. So what I'm trying to advocate is more in line with that sigma male archetype rather than the alpha male or beta male archetype.
So I will say
what I wanted to add as well is that
please.
The thing with red pill, bro, is there's a few elusive but important things in the manual of red pill which I think you need to be aware of. So for example, if you look at Rollo Tomasi's book, he mentions that this is not an ideology, but this is a praxology. I don't know if you've come across this terminology.
Yeah.
And then he proceeds in the end of his book to writing down what he talks about as 8 laws, or I think 12 iron laws.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I know they're suggestive. They're not prescriptive from one angle. They're not obligatory. You don't have to do them. The 50 rule, the vasectomy that he talks about, all those kind of things, which are arbitrary in my opinion, and there's scanty evidence for their benefit, like I've said before, right? Mm-hmm. But the vasectomy, the lack of family, don't get married, these kinds of things that he talks about, don't get married, and the iron laws and how many people you have to have sex with and all that kind of thing. But
he does advocate for marriage. He just doesn't advocate with how we do it today, with the state being involved. That's Sorry.
And I totally sympathize with that viewpoint, especially with the woman taking half of your wealth. We would consider that to be a grand injustice anyway. Yeah. And a lot of the things about how a woman can withhold the children, and that's where I agree with Red Pill. That's totally where I agree with them. I think that's where the strongest arguments lie.
Yeah.
However, I'm going back to the point that there's something quite elusive about this situation, because when something becomes ideological, when does something become ideological? It becomes ideological when it becomes what you call teleological, when it becomes prescriptive to some extent. And something can become prescriptive to some extent, even if someone's making suggestions and giving advice. I feel like Rollo Tomasi doesn't understand this point, because I saw his discussion with you and Sneeko and Destiny. And although I don't like the latter person I just mentioned, Destiny there, I don't like him. I feel like he's a weasel of a man. I don't think he's even a man. I actually don't think he's a man, let alone a high value man. He's not even a man. Him, Ben Shapiro, and all these other people that were mentioned in that discussion, they're not even men. They don't even meet the threshold of men. But putting that to the side, what I'm saying is that the red pill ideology is prescriptive, and therefore it meets the threshold of ideological. And so the Quran asks a question. Do they have partners with God that have legislated that which he has not permitted? When someone tells me to do something or not to do something, the question is, from what greater authority you're coming with this information? And people like Rollo Tomasi, with all due respect to him, because he is a clever guy and he's respectable, and I've seen his book and some of the stuff, I totally agree with him on it. But what authority do you have to give me iron laws or any kind of laws? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
if you want,
I showed a picture of him,
you guys,
some of the guys, some of the MMA fighters, I don't mention who they are, him with his hat and his ponytail and this kind of thing. And they looked at it and they said, this is a guy who's written a book, tell me what you think. The first thing they said to is, this is not the guy that's going to tell me how to be a man.
Well,
with all due respect to him.
No. I mean, if you want, I can absolutely facilitate you guys having a discussion. I think it'd be a great discussion. But, I can't really speak to his views. I mean, me and him agree on a lot of things. I don't have the 9 iron rules like he does. But I'd be happy to, facilitate that discussion if you want to talk about that.
I mean,
yeah,
debate-wise, it'd be great.
Mind that. I'm open to speak to anybody. But the point I'm making to you is, going back to the point that we, in the West, we have these rites of passage that we think we have to go through in order to be men. But the truth is, the rites of passage that you have to go through in order to be men is increasing and bettering all those virtues which are seen by cross-culturally, cross-religions, Christians, Muslims, Jews, everyone can agree all those things are good things. Like, for example, being brave, temperance, for example, having magnanimity, for example, having forgiveness, for example, being loving, for example, not being foolhardy, for example, not being cowardly, for example, and so on and so forth. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if someone works on those things, increases their knowledge, and from our perspective as Muslims, has faith, that's when they attain a high value man status. That's what it is. So high value man for us is the virtuous man. If the person cannot reach, if it's a coward, it doesn't matter how much money he is. I don't care if Bezos or Musk. If Musk one day is walking in the street, Elon Musk, and he's with his kid, or he's with his wife, yeah, and someone slaps his wife or shouts at his wife or spits on his wife, and he cannot intervene and defend in a proper manner, or at least tries to defend her, I don't care how much money he's got, how many platforms he owns, how many companies he's got. He doesn't even meet the threshold of man anymore. He's not even a man anymore, let alone high value man. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. Well, that's on an intrinsic level.
Okay.
Yes, he's always going to have women that are going to want him, but they're not going to want him for him. They're going to want him for what he has. He is a walking ATM machine. He would be. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So yeah, that's where I feel like the emphasis should be also.
So here's the thing. So and I don't blame you for this. A lot of people don't know this stuff, but we do daytime shows, right? Similar to this one that we're doing right now, where obviously you're a special guest, so we're not doing it today. But on Mondays, we talk about how to earn money, right? And obviously becoming successful, earning money, you have to have certain characteristics of being disciplined, exercising temperance, being dedicated, etc., and putting off hedonism a lot of the times to become successful. On Wednesdays, we talk about how to properly date and vet women. And then on Fridays, we answer questions. We tell guys that they need to get in shape, etc. So unfortunately, right, and this is kind of one of the things, me being very open here about our podcast, our daytime shows don't get as much views and clips and virality because
I see your point.
You see what I'm saying? Like, no one clips when I yell at men and tell them to stop being pussies. No one clips when I tell them to, honor your guys near you and have a good circle of men and be good to those men. They never clip that stuff because no one, that's not exciting. They want to see us dunk on random bimbos on after hours, and that's where people go.
That's
go
the
viral.
issue, bro.
But they never get to see the other side where we talk about. I've been very adamant about loyalty. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms I get is people say, "Oh, you're loyal to a fault. You support people all the time." Like they gave me so much criticism for standing by Andrew when he was going through that bullshit with the thing. But to me, it's second nature because that's just a masculine trait where, if you're my friend, I don't give a fuck what anyone says about you. I know that you're innocent, and I'm going to defend you regardless of whether it's popular or not. So, but obviously, these things that we talk about never get highlighted, unfortunately. What gets highlighted is us dunking on bimbos, and they assume that that's all we talk about. But we do really focus on trying to get guys to self-improve and have these virtuous traits that you're talking about. Not being a coward, sticking to your word, not being a backbiter, standing by your friends when they need you. Because that is something that I agree with you that is lost in the West in general. It's something that's lost in Gen Z especially, where for them, it's all about making content and going viral. And, there's no honor almost in today's day and age.
That's
right?
it, yeah.
So I agree with you on that. It's just that, unfortunately, that doesn't get pushed in the algorithm as much. They always clip our other stuff. Our more degenerative content gets clipped, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. I can see what you're saying.
Sorry, Fresh, you were trying to say something, right?
Nah, I get it because he didn't understand what we do outside of the dating show.
I mean,